So Operation Fortune has been in a really weird state of almost limbo over the past couple of years. This movie was actually filmed back in 2021. It was initially scheduled to be released in early 2022 by STX Films. However, they decided to delay the film because the movie does have some gangsters that are of Ukrainian descent. And that was around the time where the conflict between Russia and the Ukraine initially sort of popped off. And so, to be sensitive to the nature of that matter, they wanted to hold off the movie a little bit longer. But in the midst of doing so, STX Films kind of folded and they went through a restructuring. They got bought out by another company. I don't even know the name of the company, but ultimately, about a month and a half ago, Lionsgate acquired the distribution rights to this movie and finally decided to date it literally like a month ago. And I was just so surprised to see that because Guy Ritchie also has another movie coming out next month of this year. So he's dropping two projects within weeks of each other. But I wanted to go check out this movie and check out the latest from Guy Ritchie. He is a director that I do like. He is a director that I do typically enjoy. I really, really enjoyed his last movie, Wrath of Man, also starring Jason Statham, that came out a couple of years ago. Great, great heist action movie. His other movie that came out before that, The Gentleman, I thought it was okay. It was fine. That was starring Matthew McConaughey. That came out right before the COVID pandemic, so it kind of felt like it got lost in the shuffle and not that many people talk about it, but it was fine. But he's done so much really good stuff. The Sherlock Holmes films with Robert Downey Jr. and Jr. are both movies I really like. The Man from U.N.C.L.E. is a really, really slept on movie. Coming into this, I had high hopes, and Jason Statham, really reliable action star. And I got to say, I'm disappointed by this. I did not really enjoy Operation Fortune, unfortunately. And I think that there was a little bit of misfortune with this movie in terms of the execution and the story and the usage of the characters. I just felt a little bit let down. But to give a quick synopsis of what it's about, it's essentially about Jason Statham's character, Orson Fortune. He's hired with a team of operatives to go on a mission when the sale of some deadly new weapons, sort of threaten the world order. They threaten to disrupt the world order, but in doing so, in this mission, they have to hire one of Hollywood's biggest movie stars because the person that's involved with the sale is a huge fan of this Hollywood movie star. That person is played by Josh Hartnett, who's also in this movie. And so then you kind of go off from the mission from there. And I just have to say, after they set up the initial premise of this film, I just found it to be kind of a missed opportunity across the board because all of the people involved in this are super talented. Jason Statham, is, I said already, is somebody I really, really enjoy. He always shows up and deliver, especially from an action standpoint, from a physicality standpoint. And I felt like he was underutilized. Like, he's supposed to be this badass, this stoic personality. He almost kind of plays the same role every time, but they don't even use him in the best ways when it comes to the action. Aubrey Plaza feels really wasted here, especially after seeing what she turned in with Emily the Criminal. That might have been her best performance thus far, and here she's just kind of relegated to one-liners and quippy jokes, that are somewhat mistimed. And I think one of the consistent things that sometimes happen in Guy Ritchie movies is somewhat of an incoherent plot, something that feels a little bit disjointed. Sometimes his movies move at such a breakneck pace that you don't really understand what's going on. They don't really examine like the actual story at play, and you kind of just get lost in it, and you're just following along, and you're seeing the quippy action or the really comedic dialogue. And I felt like that this story was definitely disjointed and it was rushed, and they didn't really take the time to establish what was happening. We're just thrust right into the action. It moves at a breakneck pace. And the action sequences themselves, which was kind of the last big thing that I was looking forward to, they're fine, but they're mostly by the numbers. It's stuff you've seen before. I do appreciate that it was mostly all practical and they went to all these real exotic locations. It's a globe-trotting adventure, but for the most part, it just kind of felt by the numbers. And I didn't really walk away feeling that this added anything new. And ultimately, it feels like with Operation Fortune, with Guy Ritchie and maybe even Jason Statham as well, as frequent collaborators, they're kind of just resting on their laurels of their collaboration. The fact that they just come together, they work together frequently all the time, and maybe it'll produce a good movie, maybe it won't be. But this kind of felt like it was just coasting the entire time. And for those reasons and for the other reasons stated before, didn't really walk away with this as an enjoyable experience, and it's not something that I can recommend to people watch.
I never thought that Jason Statham and Aubrey Plaza would be in the same realm of a movie. I don't know why. It's something that never came to mind. But man, Guy Ritchie, the dude, he low-key makes a decent amount of films that we get to check out, really every other year, pretty close, I think, to every other year. And I always look forward to, watching them. So it's sad that this one is no bueno. I wonder if like he just needs to go find some other leads for a little bit, if Guy Ritchie needs to find somebody who's not Jason Statham, and vice versa for Jason Statham too, something to maybe challenge both of them in the kind of films that they make,
Sure.
or they step into. I would love to see Jason Statham in something a little bit slower. Everything Jason Statham is the fastest movie of all time. Crank by itself is like the fastest movie of all time.
Crank is on steroids for 90 minutes.
So I would love to see him in something it could still be actiony, but I would love to see him something a little slower. And I would love to see Guy Ritchie maybe even direct something a little slower and a little more, paying attention to this and that. But I don't know, they're gonna do what they want to do. But dang, sorry, Operation Fortune. It is unfortunate.
Well, to your point too, I will say I think Wrath of Man, the most recent film between those two, kind of represented some of those things. It was a little bit of a slower paced film, and there's action in it. Of course, it's a heist movie at the end of the day, but it felt like that there was a little bit more intention behind what the story was as it relates to that movie. And Jason Statham's performance, while it was mostly in the same vein of what you expect out of him, I did witness him start to kind of veer into other territories of his acting range, at least try to tap into that stuff. And I was hoping like, well, maybe we'll get more of that in this movie, but they kind of just reverted back to the same thing that brought him to the dance to begin with, which, I can't blame them for that, but how many people are really going to walk away feeling like that this was a worthwhile experience? So it's unfortunate in that respect, but folks, those are our thoughts on Operation Fortune. If you've checked out this movie, definitely hit us up and let us know what you think.